You can now hear Movie Heaven, Movie Hell on Stitcher. Stitcher is radio on demand. Listen anytime, anywhere. Stitcher is an award-winning free app that lets you listen to all your favorite shows, plus discover from 20,000 news, entertainment, and sports shows. You can also create your own custom playlists. Stitcher is available on iOS, Android, Nook, iPad, and in over 4 million car dashboards. It's on demand and it's on the go. No downloading, no syncing, no wasted memory. You can stream your favorite podcasts from Stitcher. Don't have Stitcher? Download it free today at Stitcher.com or in the App Store. And please leave us a review and rating on Stitcher. Thank you. Welcome to Movie Heaven, Movie Hell with me, Simon Aitken, and
I'm Keith Eyles, and we are both independent filmmakers that enjoy discussing other filmmakers' work.
So this week we have a bit of a disclaimer. We looked for directors whose surname started with Q, and unfortunately we could only find two.
Yeah, the brothers Quay, which really they've only done a couple of features and some fairly obscure stuff. And Richard Quinn or Quine, I don't know how that's pronounced, but he has loads of credits, but most of his films were sort of back in the 50s and quite difficult to get hold of and review his work. So we felt we weren't really if you like, qualified to give a proper critique on these particular filmmakers. So, what have we done?
We've cheated.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, we decided to do Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
Because of Quentin.
Yeah, and also there's plenty of teas when we get to tea, so
yes,
it allows us to talk about someone else then. So yeah.
But what we'll do in the future when it comes to a letter where we can't find a director to talk about, we will just skip it. But we thought this time we would bring Quentin forward.
Well, yeah, because he is kind of man of the moment again as we're recording this, isn't he? So yeah,
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because a Tarantino film comes out and it's usually there's a big hurrah about it and stuff, but it has kind of been eclipsed by Star Wars.
Of course.
Everything's kind of been eclipsed by Star Wars. I mean, still, as we're speaking, number one in the box office.
Mm-hmm.
Where usually it would be a Tarantino film in that place.
Yeah.
And so it's that they're finding it very hard to knock Tarantino, knock Star Wars off its throne.
Yes. And obviously Star Wars will be something that we will be visiting at length in future podcasts.
We weren't supposed to say.
Oh, we're not supposed to say anything. Okay. We can cut that out.
I can cut it out.
Or you can leave it in for a bit of banter, whatever. Oh dear. So Quentin, yes. This is kind of, he's another one. I know we've had a few of them on this on these podcasts where, even though he's only actually done eight films, it's kind of difficult because he's one of those guys that has been so documented and so interviewed over the years that there's probably not much that you and I could say about this guy that hasn't already been said somewhere. I mean, he is, because he was like born a decade or so earlier than us. When you and I started getting sort of really interested in films, in filmmaking, he was really that guy that sort of came along and at the right time for us, wasn't he? For our generation of filmmaker, very much. Yeah.
Well, that's right, because hit when Reservoir Dogs came out, I just turned 16.
Right.
And I didn't get to see it until I was about 19, because A, I couldn't see it in the cinema, and B, because it was banned on VHS for a long time.
Right.
There was actually a few years there where you couldn't actually watch Reservoir Dogs on VHS,
Yes, that is
which was
true.
crazy.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Because I went back and watched it, and yes, it's violent, but the amount of blood and gore in it is not much. It's the equivalent of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre when it comes to blood and gore. It's more implied than it is. I mean, yes, you have the two cops being shot in the car where it's quite explosive.
Yeah.
But
and the ear scene, but they pan away from anyway.
They pan away from it. You don't actually see him slice the ear off. I think it's that trick of not showing it, but the audience members turned away, not looking, and they think they see it.
Yeah.
Or they hear it, but they're not looking. So they automatically think it must be there on screen for all to see when it isn't.
Well, it just shows you how much all this sort of censorship and whatever has actually changed in just the last 20 years. It's quite substantial, isn't it, when you think about it that way? Yeah,
it has a lot. Yeah.
But
the thing is, when Tarantino came along, he was a filmmaker who he made you want to go out and watch other films.
Oh, totally.
But he was either homaging or ripping off, or whatever your point of view is on his sort of way of taking bits and pieces from other films and putting them into his films.
No, exactly. I mean, he really was. He kind of brought back that sort of 70s maverick exploitation, director type feel. The things that I guess Scorsese and Schrader and Bogdanovich and Cassavetes and all those sort of guys of that era. And obviously, being in mind, he's a massive fan of all sorts of movies, cinema in general, and he was very much a massive fan of B movies and all those exploitation films from the 60s and 70s, and most definitely inspired by a lot of that stuff. But it's quite interesting. He kind of put a spin on it and brought it to the mainstream in the early 90s. So yeah, very cool.
Well, yeah, I would say he was a more populist director. I mean, those directors you've just listed, they all have their thing.
Yes.
And I know Tarantino has the dialogue, but a lot of the imagery and ways of doing stuff are very. It has been very much taken from other people, and they're clear to see. It's with those directors you were talking about. They may have taken their influences, but they distilled it through them, and they came out their own work. With Tarantino, they just distilled through him, and it's kind of like it reminds me of a friend of mine long time ago when he was learning to play the guitar. He'd always be at parties and he'll play a bit. He goes, "Can you guess what this is?" And he'll make you want to guess what the tune of the song is. And that's what Tarantino does.
Mm-hmm.
He's there on, with a guitar playing a little tune and go, "You know what that is?"
Yeah.
And then he'll play another tune. "You know what that is?" And then another one. "Do you know what that is?"
Yeah.
Or in his case, "Do you know what film this is from?"
Well, absolutely. And he cast the net quite wide as well, because, his influences came from, the history of cinema, but from all over the world as well, from sort of Italian horror to spaghetti western to Japanese martial arts films and all of those sort of things. And yeah, he kind of put it all into sort of melting pot and made it his own in many respects, hasn't he? Like every time you see a Tarantino film now, you kind of he's got his themes and his styles that are there through the entire body of it.
Well, I think the only thing that kind of makes it a Tarantino film is the dialogue. I have to say, a lot of the imagery and stuff is very much you can tell which films he's taken it from and stuff. So to say that his style, I think it's the dialogue. I mean, the end of the day, it's all about the dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
because he comes up with dialogue that's, up to a certain point was quite memorable. I am really finding it difficult to remember dialogue from his later films, including The Hateful Eight.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I could still quote Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction,
Oh
and
yeah,
Jackie Brown.
yeah. I mean, he's very quotable, and obviously, like you said, dialogue and script is kind of where it all started for him anyway. From being a script doctor on stuff right the way through to selling his first couple of screenplays before making it as a filmmaker in his own right. And very, I mean, obviously by the time I got to film school, which was what, 95, 96, he was very established by that point, and there's no doubt about it. 9 out of 10 of every student in the class would mention Tarantino, and would sort of draw from him as inspiration and stuff. So it was a very interesting time back then.
Well, yeah, because for you can tell if a filmmaker is making an influence out there is the amount of short films and student films then start aping that same style. It's like when Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels came out. The amount of short films I saw afterwards with dodgy geezers, with dodgy deals, started coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
It was literally like an explosion of these kind of stories. And it was the same with Tarantino, that very much trying to do the Tarantino style of dialogue, of where it's talking about something that has nothing to do with the plot.
Yeah, some form of pop culture.
Yeah,
just
something that's it's entertaining.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I have to admit, on one of my films, I put a camera in the boot of a car and had the actress close the boot on us and stuff. So yeah, absolutely, he's I know a few people who don't like him actually.
Yeah, I know a few people as well.
Yeah, but he is a true fan of all things cinema. I mean, to the point that it's almost not just a passion; it's almost seems to be an obsession of his. But he's also somebody that looking at it, seems to have been successful and got there off his own back and in his own right.
Well, the thing I like about Tarantino is that he elevates a lot of people. That's one thing I do like about him, is the fact that he raises up other people who've probably been in the industry for a long time, and he brings them to the public's notice. So, like, talking about Corman, talking about black exploitation films, having actors like Pam Grier, John Travolta.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of the other actor from Jackie Brown.
Oh, Robert Foster.
Yeah, who were actors who were out there working, but weren't getting those kind of roles. And then Tarantino came along and cast them in his films, and then suddenly they had a career resurgence.
Yeah, Academy Award nominations and everything. So no, absolutely. He's certainly relaunched careers of people that he enjoyed while he was growing up. In certain films that like you said had a total slump in their career, and sort of brought them back to the mainstream, which is a really cool thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, and and he could have sort of ignored all that, or just sort of got his own way, but it's great that he tries to sort of elevate those people with him.
Yes.
So that's commendable. Before we move on to our picks, I just wanted to ask, what was the weirdest Tarantino story you heard?
Story?
Yeah, I'll give you my one,
okay.
And then you to give you the gist. I remember probably when I was studying for film, and we were talking about Tarantino, and I remember somebody said to me, "Did you know that he went to jail?" And I was like, "What?" He's like, yeah. What happened was that he had all these parking tickets, and he didn't pay him, and the police caught up with him, and instead of um, paying these fines, he actually said he decided to go to prison because he wanted to hear how people talked. He wanted, yeah, exactly. You know, and yeah, and that's where he got his style of writing. It's from being in prison and listening to these guys and hearing them talk, and hearing that, you know, they're not there in corners, you know, plotting. They're actually talking about stuff like you and me. And I must admit, at the time, I, not knowing much about Tarantino, probably fell for it hook, line, and sinker. But now knowing about him, it's definitely not true.
I'll tell you what, we meet some weirdos in this business, don't we? Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. I'm sure there's a raft of urban legends about Quentin out there, and I can't off the top of my head think about a specific one that I'd been told or anything. I mean, I do know, and I believe this one. There is some fact in this that he I don't know about the whole jail thing, but I know he got arrested once or in trouble once for when he was still a juvenile, stealing an Elmore Leonard novel from a convenience store or something, which I think is quite ironic when you think he ends up directing a story based on one of Elmore Leonard's stories. But yeah, I don't know. There's some weird stuff out there said about him, and but yeah, I mean, nearly anyone you talk to about films always has some connection or something to say about Quentin. As Quentin has a lot of things to say himself. I mean, his big thing at the moment, as you and I saw firsthand, at the Hateful Eight premiere was this thing about him wanting films not only to be shot entirely on film, but also to be projected in movie theaters on film as well, and do away with this whole digital cinema, which he cites as like watching TV in a theater or whatever. Which I think, I'm not sure I 100% agree with what he's saying there. I think he might have gone a little bit far, and I think he's lost touch of reality slightly in the business. That again, he's one of the very few that cinemas will actually go and reinvest in film equipment, film projectors, and whatever to show his film. If you or I went to do that, we wouldn't get very far. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember there's a whole actually controversy about that because I think it was the ArcLight in LA.
Right.
He had booked, because it was the only cinema in LA that has 70mm, or that Tarantino wanted it to show there because he likes the projection there.
It's a beautiful
Yeah.
cinema. It is a very nice cinema. Yeah.
Well, what happened was they had booked it for Christmas I think for 2 weeks, and Disney wanted to book the cinema for Star Wars totally over Christmas, and they actually threatened to not give them the film at all unless they got that slot. Now, this is the thing, I don't know what happened. There was the whole controversy. I mean, there was Tarantino going out there, going on about this, but I don't know. I do not know what's happened, if they bowed to Disney, or if they didn't like the bad publicity and they just backed down. Don't know. I'm guessing they probably backed down.
Yes, there you go. It's another. We're back to Star Wars versus the Hateful Eight, and two big powers there with Disney and Quentin. Yeah, interesting. Or the Weinsteins, should we say? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Disney and the Weinsteins. My God, yes. The key to the industry. Disney, Spielberg, and the Weinsteins. If you know any of them, you're sorted.
But I mean, just going back onto Tarantino's sort of view about digital cinema and stuff. I mean, yeah, we'd all love to turn back the clock. but you know, things progress, things move forward. You know, I mean, the thing is, if we all had to go back to film, you know, I don't know about you, Keith, but I know at this point I wouldn't be able to afford to make films.
Oh yeah, no, for
Yeah,
sure, for sure.
yeah,
No,
or have them projected decently.
yeah, no, for
I
sure.
mean, this is the thing. It's great that Tarantino's had all these films projected on 35 mm.
Yeah.
You imagine taking your, you know, film that you shot um, on digital, and they have some crappy old little projector that they don't use, and I remember going to one screening where it was actually crooked
Oh my God.
because they didn't use it,
Yeah.
and they put it on, and then suddenly, as the film started, realized that it was sort of slightly diagonal on the screen.
Oh dear. Yeah, no, it's a nightmare having anything screened consistently, and that is where
Yeah.
digital is a little bit more flexible. But any listeners that you know are interested in that sort of thing, we did do a podcast a few back called Film versus Digital, so please check it out. And you know, myself and Simon, you know, discuss this in some detail. So please
Yeah.
do check that one out
Yeah.
if you haven't already, because obviously you listen to every episode if you're listening to this, right?
Right, let's move on.
Move on, yes.
So Keith, what is your pick for movie heaven?
All right, well, for this one, I just went with Pulp Fiction, which is a lot of people's favorite. Again, you know, I'm not going to be able to say much about this that hasn't already been said. The reason I picked this was actually the first film of his that I saw, because I saw this at the cinema, whereas much like yourself, you know, Reservoir Dogs, when that came out, I wasn't able to see that at the time, and like you rightly said, it wasn't available for some time either. I did subsequently get to see it on the big screen. You know, I think shortly after the release of Pulp Fiction, in fact, probably. But yeah, this was the this was my sort of introduction to Quentin Tarantino, and a damn fine introduction I thought it was too. And you know, when I went back and watched Reservoir Dogs, I found that also equally enjoyable. And you know, since this, I think I've seen every film of Quentin's on the big screen since. So, but yeah, this is where it all sort of started. I know it wasn't where it started, but it was where it kind of started for me.
Well, it's the same for me.
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction was the first film I saw.
Right.
I didn't see it at the cinema. I saw it. It was one of those films where I saw bits and pieces of it for a while before actually sitting down watching the whole thing. So I'd seen it around people's houses. It's one of those films people would put on during parties. So as you're sort of drinking and talking to other people, there's this film playing in the background, and you don't really take much notice of it. Or certain scenes you would stop and watch and then sort of continue talking and stuff. So I never really sort of sat down, watched it properly from beginning to end.
Oh, right.
For quite a while. It was actually about, I think, the fourth viewing where I actually sat down, watched it beginning to end. And I mean, I did enjoy it, and I sort of, you know, knew bits of it very well up to that point. I mean, we all know the scene with the injection.
Oh, big time. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those massively, you know, quotable films as well. You were saying about dialogue and whatever. I mean, this is the king of it.
Oh god, yeah, Royale with cheese.
Exactly, all that stuff. Which is, you know,
Zed's dead, baby. Zed's dead.
Yeah, all of that stuff. But no, I mean, I really love this film. In fact, something last year. Actually, no, shit, that's scary. 2 years ago, when it had its 20th anniversary re-release at the cinemas, I was a little bit disappointed because this was when I was teaching, and I was living basically because I was quite poor at that point. I was in London at weekends, but I wasn't teaching in London, so I would spend the week. I actually, it was cheaper. Would you believe it was cheaper to hire rent a room in someone's home during the week than commute each day, which was crazy back then, I think. But anyway,
Oh,
Um,
it's not changed. Trust me, I've been on a few jobs last year where train tickets have been over £100.
Bloody hell. Right. Well,
Yeah.
anyhow, so yeah, listen to that, America. Anyway, no, it was one of those situations where it was showing at the local cinema, and while I was teaching, a lot of my students, bearing in mind some of them were, at that point only just turning 18, 19, so they were pretty young. They hadn't yet seen this film, and I tried to urge them. I said, please, go along and see it on this 20th anniversary screening. And they had like a sort of one-off screening in the week of it, and one evening. And I even, I negotiated with the cinema to for a student, a special student discount and everything, and I was really trying to get students along to see this. And I turned up, and I was horrified. There was about six people in the theater, and not one of the students turned up. And I was just, that just
Oh,
made me really sad, because I thought they are missing something special here.
I hope you never did anything like that for them ever again.
No, I mean, this was yeah, this was just a one off. But yeah, and I'm not saying that they're all like that, but it was just what I found weird was, for a film that is now considered sort of a modern classic. I just was quite surprised that nobody nobody turned up to rewatch it. But
Well, the thing about a film like this is it's got to be recommended by a friend. If your teacher says, "Oh, you should go and watch this film," I think there's still teenagers and there's still that kind of bit of rebellion in them. That's like, "Oh, I don't want to listen to what the teacher has to say."
yeah, maybe it's kind of.
I mean, it's they'll certainly come round to it. I mean, if they're interested in film, they'll definitely come round to it. I mean, they probably watched a Tarantino film now and wonder what the rest of them are like.
Mhm.
And my opinion, the earlier films are the better films.
Yeah, I think, yeah. I mean, I find all of his. I've not found a film of his. I mean, we'll talk about other films later, but so I don't want any spoilers there. But yeah, his films, I always find them entertaining. There's always something about them that's entertaining, regardless of whether they overall work or not. This one, I think, is the absolute gold, in the fact that I think this whole thing, from its narrative structure to its use of music to its performances, absolutely to its dialogue, which you've mentioned, um, I think everything about it just works really, really well. And it's one of those. It's another one of those films. I know I say this often, so there's lots of films out there that I can sort of sit and watch at any time, and this is certainly one of them. And yeah, I just remember the first experience of watching it. Massively enjoyable. It was very different to anything that I was used to seeing at that point, even though I could definitely see where some of the homages and references had come from. Um, but I did like, his way of letting these characters. I like the fact that characters crossed over between the stories. I like the fact that the stories weren't, linear. So you'd get things happening midway through, and then those characters would come back towards the end, etc., etc. Also, this was kind of the thing, I guess, where, I mean, I know he'd done a lot of films, a lot of stuff previous, but this was where Samuel L. Jackson, who's obviously one of Tarantino's most frequent collaborators, but is where he really, from my perspective anyway, first came on the radar big time. I was like, wow, who is this guy? He's scary and hilarious at the same time.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's the thing. It was a star turn for Samuel Jackson. I mean, he stole the whole film. Right, he pulled the rug out of all the other actors there. There's some, big names there. I mean, Bruce Willis and John Travolta, Tim Roth,
Harvey Keitel.
Keitel, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Christopher Walken.
I don't know if you've seen the adverts. We have these adverts over here in the UK where we have Mr. Wolf.
And Winston Wolfe, I solve problems.
Winston Wolfe turns up to people's houses and asks if they have insurance and stuff. And I have to say, when they do something like that, it does demean a character. And it also, in some sense, I feel sad because it's like, oh, you know, poor Harvey Keitel. Obviously, he needs the money if he's doing these adverts that are playing off a character he played 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Maybe he enjoys it. I don't know.
I guess I'm sure there was a massive paycheck attached to this.
Oh hell yeah! But
the thing is,
it just demeans the character.
I agree. I mean, I do cringe slightly, but I can also see it kind of works from the advertising point of view because it is such a quotable and you know, such a good reference, I suppose, that people remember it. You know, but yeah,
it's such a watered down version of it. You know, there's no swearing in it at all. I think only one of the adverts got a 12 because they had a blow up doll in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Funny enough, one was on about 5 minutes before we sat down to record this podcast. I was like, here we go.
Yeah, it's prolific. I mean, it's on a lot. I've seen it at the cinema a lot as well. And so they're taking that as far as they can. But I mean, it'd be much better if they had a bit more swearing in it, you know.
Yeah.
Pretty please, with sugar on top.
Yeah.
Clean a fucking car.
Yes. No, great scenes, and you know, a wonderful ensemble in this of actors. I remember this also sort of brought Ving Rhames to my attention as well. Again, I know he'd done loads of stuff before, but and plenty of stuff since, but you know, I really enjoyed this. I like the fact that, you know, also Quentin, because he hates sort of product placement and whatever, you know, kind of you get all of his own brands and things of that nature, and his films have this sort of
cigarettes.
His films sort of have this. They sort of take place within this sort of Tarantino verse.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's talked about how a lot of these films connect up because the pilot that Uma Thurman talks about is very much the setup for Kill Bill.
Right.
The whole idea of this group of what are they called?
Fun Foxy Five or whatever, wasn't it?
No,
what was it? It was something like that.
It's Fox Five. I know something. Yeah. Anyway, it's very much the setup for the assassins in Kill Bill, apart from the jokes, of course.
Yeah,
she doesn't get to tell a joke at the end, but there's that. I mean, also you've got Vincent Vega.
I'm trying to catch up, actually.
Yeah.
to remember what they were called. I'm trying to catch up. Yeah.
Very good. But no, I was saying that Vincent Vega is supposed to be the brother to is it Vince Vega in Reservoir Dogs?
Yeah.
Mr. Blonde.
Yeah, exactly.
They were going to be actually related.
Yeah, they were going to do there was a time when Michael Madsen and John Travolta, they were going to do a Vega brothers film, and that never transpired for whatever reason. But
the thing is, you get word of these sort of projects that he's making years in advance. So I think it's one of those things where he's talking about an idea that he's working on, and then suddenly it just becomes news.
Yeah.
Because I know he'd been working on Inglourious Bastards for a while. I know he was thinking of doing that film as well as thinking of doing the Vega brothers at the same time. So, you know, one over the other.
Yeah. No, I mean, well, he's always working on like even with his latest one, you know, that had been a script that he'd written as a stage play, and you know, that ended up coming about, and they did that rehearsed reading, and it ended up, you know, becoming the film that is, you know, now The Hateful Eight, and it's interesting, isn't it?
That's not entirely true. What I heard was that it was going to be for film. It wasn't going to be a stage play. It was the fact that it got leaked onto the internet that made him just, you know, wonder what to do with it.
Oh, right.
And then the idea of doing a stage play came out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and because he did the reading on stage, it was what sort of gave them the drive to go out and make it again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I do remember it was actually one of the actors involved who leaked it, or that was the story was. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe they found out that it wasn't one of the actors. It was somebody else. But yeah, I do remember there was Tarantino throwing his hands up in the air and going, "I'm not making it now.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's out there. I'm not making it."
But no, and apparently that's supposed to take place in the same fictional universe as Django Unchained. Yeah, which, I don't think there was any overt crossovers or anything or references, but I know that that's been talked about as well. In various interviews and things of that nature. But yeah, I mean, Pulp Fiction really is. I mean, if there's anyone listening to this that hasn't seen it, which I find highly unlikely, but if there is anyone, for God's sake, go and see it. Treat yourself. It's a wonderful piece of entertainment and a wonderful piece of cinema, I think. And it is quintessential Quentin, isn't it? I mean, it really is.
Yeah. I mean, also the music in it is great.
Yeah, exactly. Or sort of mainly source music, but again, sourced from record collections that Quentin had over the years, and well, like he often does with his films, puts them in to accompany the film as a soundtrack almost.
But I mean, this is the thing that Tarantino did do, was he did revive the interest in soundtrack albums, because I think this was the first one I got, and then I got Reservoir Dogs, and then I got Jackie Brown. And as the other films have come out since, I've been less and less been buying them, because I just think the choices of music aren't that great. And
you mean you didn't have music inspired by the film Beverly Hills Cop and Top Gun and and all those Harold Faltermeyer ones of the 80s?
No, but I'm guessing you did.
Yeah, I think they were knocking around somewhere. Yeah.
Oh, those came later, but it was about the time when I was sort of getting really interested in music and stuff. And I mean, also the fact you had the dialogue on there,
yes,
which may have not been a new thing, but certainly was something that caught people's attention at that point.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Guy Ritchie earlier, and the soundtrack to Lock, Stock has exactly the same things, where in between tracks you'll get like a 30-second audio clip from the film, somebody having a rant or whatever, and it'll be in between the tracks. And yeah, it's been very sort of done since, but I remember the Pulp Fiction one.
Style.
I was going to say, I remember the Pulp Fiction one in particular, because you did have the whole Royale with cheese and eating pig and and all of those wonderful exchanges.
Well, you had the Honey Bunny.
Yes.
And
good opening, that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And Pumpkin sort of opening speech at the beginning, and then you had the Royale with cheese, and then you had Zed's dead, baby. Zed's dead. And I think it was a very good way of sort of, again, sort of learning the dialogue, making it more quotable, because it was there on the album.
Yeah.
And the actual dialogue they picked was very good. I know he doesn't do that anymore now with the soundtrack albums. I believe I don't think, was there any on Death? No, there was. Sorry, there was some on Death Proof. Sorry, I take that back. No, he still does the whole dialogue on the album stuff. It's forgettable. I mean, the Death Proof album, where you've got oh God, my mind's gone blank. Oh, Eli Roth.
Yes.
Doing his speech about, giving the girls more drinks, so that they'll go to the cabin with them. just forget.
Very winky. Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Well, no, but just not to the same level as Pulp Fiction.
Yes. If by some bizarre reason somebody is listening to this wondering what the hell we're talking about here, check out the soundtrack, and it will become much more apparent.
I doubt there's not many people out there who doesn't know about the soundtrack and stuff, especially if they listen to this podcast.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But you know, I could wax lyrical about this film loads. Most of it are probably things people know anyway. But
yeah, I was going to say before we move on is the fact that with Pulp Fiction, it is long, but it doesn't feel long.
No.
And it feels that it's the right length, and there's nothing in that film that sort of drags.
No.
And the thing with a lot of Tarantino films, especially of late, is that scenes could actually be cut out and it'd be fine. And you know, you could lose 20 minutes here and there on a lot of the films lately.
Yeah.
Because there seems to be stuff in there that's it just seems not needed. And it's like going back and watching Reservoir Dogs and watching a film that was, 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It was very refreshing.
Yeah, I was going to say, what happened to that? Yeah.
Yeah, because after that one, it was, 2 hours plus, man.
Yeah, I mean, this one doesn't seem long, but I think a lot of that is because of the chapter structure and the wonderful writing, but also the out of sequence narrative. I think the sort of non-linear narrative of the whole thing kind of keeps you, it just keeps you, holds you there. He's very good in lots of his films, but particularly in this one of having something fairly intense going on that kind of really holds you there as an audience, and he doesn't do it better than he does in this, in my opinion.
I mean, have you seen it in order?
I don't know. This is one of those things. I think there is is there something available that shows it in order?
There's a cut on YouTube. I saw it.
I don't care. I'm not bothered about that. That's not the film.
Yeah, but it's interesting to watch.
Is it?
Because because then it just confirms that the structure that it was made was the right way of doing it. Because watching it, it's very, so it starts off with the watch. Mm-hmm. So Christopher Walken doing the speech.
Mm-hmm. Great speech.
And then and then and then kind of starts normally. So we have Jules and Vincent in the car going off to pick up the suit, the briefcase,
the MacGuffin briefcase.
Yeah. And but then it's sort of, then you get the end bit after that,
right,
with the cafe, and then you've got the date, and then you've got the boxing, and so it finishes. It starts off with the watch, but finishes with Bruce Willis driving off with the girlfriend.
Zed's dead. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the last line is Zed's dead, and it doesn't because that speech at the end that Jules gives about about his speech from the Bible, and what it means, and it's a perfect way of ending the story.
Okay, so Bruce Willis kind of almost, or his character at least, not him as the actor, but his character kind of bookends the entire story then when it's in chronological order. Yeah. Okay.
Which is very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So because you have the cafe scene that bookends the film.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that if put in chronological order, you still have two bookends with the same character.
Oh, right, fair enough. No, maybe I should. I do love the film enough that watching it in a different way would probably not be that bad of an experience. So maybe I'll have to. That's online, because obviously that's nothing official, is it? That's an online thing.
I would be surprised if it was still on YouTube. I mean, they've taken a lot of stuff down lately, so I would be really surprised if it's still.
I know,
but I know it's worth watching.
Yeah, I know it's been done recently as well. It was released. I remember it actually came out on VHS sometime in the early 90s or whatever. But they've done it with the Godfather as well. The Legacy. They've actually put it in chronological.
Yes,
so you get the De Niro stuff first, and whatever. But But one thing, although I'm sure everybody listening already knows this bit of, well, trivia or conjecture or whatever it is, but there are those that say that the MacGuffin briefcase in Pulp Fiction actually contains the things from the heist at the beginning of Reservoir Dogs. I've heard, but I don't know whether
that's
official.
one theory. The other theory I've heard
is
that Ving Rhames' character is actually the devil, and that's why he has a plaster on the back of his neck, because it's a third eye, and that the contents of the briefcase is a soul.
Nice.
But
hence why it hums when they open it. Because it does very slightly. A nice bit of sound design.
Yeah, and it glows as well. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what's in there, because the film isn't about that.
No, exactly.
It's just,
it's a MacGuffin, like a Hitchcock MacGuffin. That is, yes, absolutely. Cool. Well, we like it though. We like it. Pulp Fiction gets a massive thumbs up. I don't think I've met even people who don't like Tarantino particularly. I think most people I know enjoy Pulp Fiction. I don't think I've met anyone.
I know one person who doesn't like it.
Oh, really?
I know one person who doesn't like it, but then he doesn't like Tarantino stuff.
Fair enough.
So.
Fair enough. Yeah. He's entitled to his opinion, like everyone. Yeah.
Yes. Right. Moving on to my pick for Movie Heaven.
It's a good one.
I decided to go with Jackie Brown.
Yes.
Now, Jackie Brown was the first Tarantino film I saw in the cinema.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. As I said, I missed Reservoir Dogs. I missed Pulp Fiction. So this was the first one I got to see.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked it, because it's one of those that it is a fabulous film, and I don't know whether it's necessarily talked about as much as some of his other films, like the one I've just picked. But it was really nice to go back and revisit this. Actually, really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I think it's because it's a bit more mature than his other stories. There is it's a film most people consider not, well, they've seen and stuff, but they don't really hold up in high esteem. It's very weird. I mean, from what I remember, it didn't do very well at the box office.
Oh, did it not? Okay, I don't.
Which is surprising to me, because the screening I went to was packed.
All right.
And everybody I know had seen it, so it just, maybe it didn't do as well as Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction.
Possibly. I mean, the big difference with this one to all of his other work is the fact that this one's actually an adaptation, rather than most of his stuff is written and directed by him, whereas this is written for the screen, but it is actually adapted from Elmore Leonard's story, isn't it? Is it called Rum Punch?
Rum Punch.
Yeah.
No, I love it. I think it's great. I mean, the sequence with Beaumont is very much like its own little story in the rest of it. And
Chris Tucker,
who's in most films is bloody annoying.
Yes, I'm glad you said that, because Chris Tucker is somebody that I can really set my teeth on edge in a lot of stuff, but I actually thought he was great.
It took me a while to sort of like his character in Fifth Element, because for a long time annoyed the hell out of me.
Yeah, I hated it, I have to say. That's a whole nother podcast. Yeah.
But that whole sequence, it's just great. It is just two people talking for the majority of it, and one trying to convince the other to get into the boot, and it's great, because I think up to that point you weren't aware of Samuel Jackson's character being that sort of devious. Why would somebody spend all this money just to take him out, get him out of jail and then take him out?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's no, that's a great scene, and I don't think it's obvious at all. And also, I really like the way it's shot. The fact that he, decides to sort of hold that in a
Yeah.
wide, and you get the you see it from a distance, and I think that makes it more powerful.
Yeah, I mean, some wonderful choices for camera work in this, like with the opening sequence following Pam Grier. She's on the conveyor belt going through the airport.
She's a foxy lady. Yeah.
Well, because she did a film called Foxy Brown.
Indeed.
So, and again, that's where he got the idea for that, because that's where that opening credits came from. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it does work for this, and I think the fact that it was Pam Grier doing it and not another actress, I think, helps.
Oh, I think Pam Grier is absolutely amazing in this film.
Pam Grier is really good.
Yeah.
And again, it was another role that sort of made her got her more work, made her sort of more noticeable, because she'd been working a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, do you remember she was in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey?
Oh God, yeah, okay, yeah. I have vague recollection of that.
I mean, in such a throwaway character.
Yeah.
I mean, she's literally, she talks to him at the beginning about the Battle of the Bands, and then turns up, and then you find out it was actually somebody. It was Rufus.
Yeah.
In a Pam Grier suit.
The show is stolen, I'm afraid, with William Sadler playing Death.
Oh yeah, Melvin.
Really like William Sadler, but that's a whole nother podcast. But it's the thing with Pam Grier in this as well, and her character is it made me chuckle rewatching this. Is the fact that you've got De Niro and Samuel L. Jackson, who are sort of your typical tough guys, but when you think about it, in this film they are actually quite inept.
Yes.
And the smart one is definitely Jackie Brown, or Pam Grier's character Jackie Brown, is the smart one, and also Bridget Fonda
as Melanie.
I mean, despite what happens to her at the end or whatever, she's she's a lot smarter than these guys surrounding her, and I thought that was quite a nice change,
but
a nice thing to
that's
see.
what makes them dangerous, because they don't know how stupid they are. I mean, the fact that Robert De Niro's character shoots Bridget Fonda's character in the face when she's pissing him off. She's just sort of nagging too much, and that's not a normal reaction. That's just a reaction under stress.
I was going to say, I think I've seen a few husbands in shopping malls that look like they want to do the same thing, but
nobody actually does.
But then the girls don't look as hot as Bridget Fonda did in this film. I mean, she looked great in this, didn't she?
Yeah. And it was nice that she was sort of playing somebody her age, because she was talking about, because Samuel L. Jackson refers to her character as, when she was younger, that she was a lot hotter and stuff.
Oh,
like
yeah,
that. And
yeah.
Just recently, she's sort of been nagging a lot more. But I mean, yeah. But no. I mean, it's. I mean, the thing was, Tarantino said when he was making this film that he wanted to make a film about hanging out, that you could hang out with these characters and spend time with them, and that's certainly what you do.
Yeah.
But it's a film that doesn't outstay its welcome. It's just the right time, and it's great that you see a lot of the sort of the planning. So they do like the dry run of bringing the money back.
Yeah. Oh, which is brilliant. That's all. Yeah. That's in fact, that whole the whole mall scene is so nicely executed, and the fact that it's done from the different points of view and whatever works beautifully. I mean,
but you got to remember, you. But the thing is, you sat through the trial run.
Yeah.
So you see him do it one time, and then you sort of you see that Pam Grier and Robert Forster's character Max Cherry sort of plan to do something else, or maybe not, because you never really see him agree to it there and then. But then once you get to sort of that main scene of the actual the double cross. That's the it's the killing. It's oh god, I'm trying to think of the Kurosawa film.
Oh, yeah. Well,
That
Kurosawa
one.
is another influence for him anyway, isn't it?
Oh yeah, but I mean
As many
the whole,
filmmakers, but
but you know, the whole sort of seeing events happen from two different points of view.
yes, I know, exactly.
From three different points of view. So you actually see the action play out one way, and then you go back and you see it from another point of view, and you learn something else more, and then again the third time. And yeah, it was done really well, but you know, it was done as well in the killing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the you know, the fact you were saying about this film doesn't outstay its welcome. I mean, it's actually a 154-minute film, so it's a pretty long film, but it certainly doesn't feel like it when you're watching it at all.
No, it doesn't at all.
At all.
No.
Which you know, again, I can't necessarily say the same about some of his later work, which does sometimes feel a tad long.
Yeah.
But you know, this seemed quite tight considering.
Yeah.
And the story.
Well, the one thing I do like about this film is that we don't get Tarantino in an acting role.
Yes, that's true. Yes, apart from the voice on the answer machine or something.
Yes,
isn't it? But that's
yeah.
it.
Well, that's the thing. You can't escape from him not being involved in it in some formal manner. I mean, even Hateful Eight. Spoiler, but he's not in it. There's no acting role for him.
He's definitely a frustrated actor, though.
Yeah. Yes,
he is, and you know, again, in fact, that's something I should have made as a point when we were talking about Pulp Fiction. You know, the one or two scenes he's in that is Jimmy. Yeah, he's not actually. He kind of works for that role. He's not too jarring. Whereas I've seen him in other stuff for other directors where he's completely jarring, and you're like, no, you shouldn't be. And even in some of his work as well, like his bit in Django was pretty jarring, wasn't it?
Oh, he was awful.
Yeah, exactly.
In his segment of Four Rooms.
Oh well, yeah,
awful.
I don't have a high opinion of Four Rooms anyway. No, I have to say.
Well, I kind of liked Four Rooms until it got to the Tarantino part. And I thought his was the weakest of the four. Sorry, the other three were a lot better, a lot more inventive, and his was just it was just terrible.
Yeah, Four Rooms for me was I haven't seen it in a long time, but I was always slightly disappointed with it. To me, it felt a somewhat indulgent film, like, you know, a bunch of mate actors and directors kind of got together and just sort of had a laugh and made this, and I didn't really feel it was particularly great, if I'm honest. But
well, I had avoided it for a long time because of those reasons, because everybody kept saying the same thing, and then I watched it last year on Netflix, and I quite enjoyed it, apart from the Tarantino bit,
right,
which was the one bit everybody told me was the best bit, and it wasn't. It was god awful, and I thought him having the main role in it was, shouldn't have done it, man.
Yeah.
Should have just given it to somebody else. But I mean, he's fine as Mr. Brown.
Yeah, that's fine.
In you know, Reservoir
Dogs. I
agree. Even though it's you know, at the beginning it's his speech that opens it about Madonna and Like a Virgin.
It's a very well written speech, though. Let's be fair.
I always love what Mr. White says. I got Mr. Chew coming out of one ear, and I got big dicks coming out of the other.
Yes, indeed.
Going back to Jackie Brown. No, I think it was a wise move to sort of not be in it. I think all the actors in it did a hell of a job, and I also love the fact that a character got carried over from this story over to another Elmore Leonard.
Oh, what, Steven Soderbergh's Out of Sight? Yeah.
Yes, with Michael Keaton's Ray Nicolette.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool that there was a crossover and a tie-in between those films. Absolutely, that was.
Well, I mean, there's been tie-ins before, but you've never had the same actor play the tie-in.
Yeah.
if you know what I mean. That hasn't been a part of a series of films, you know. The fact that these two different films just being made from Elmore Leonard books decided to have the same character in it and to cast the same actor who was willing to come back and play that role, even though it was smaller in Out of Sight.
Yeah. No, it's pretty cool. It was good to see Keaton because he's great in that role. And I have to say, I mean, I like Steven Soderbergh as a director as well, and I thought Out of Sight was a decent movie. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it was just really good. And again, it was another film that played with structure.
Yes.
Especially its use of freeze frames.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the use of freeze frames in it, and George Clooney was very good in that. But I mean, is that community is very small because I mean, Clooney had worked with Tarantino on From Dusk Till Dawn.
That's right.
Actually, if we're going to talk about Tarantino roles, actually, From Dusk Till Dawn, he is very good in that film.
Yeah,
very good in that film, and it's just a shame that his acting never got any better.
Yeah. Well, actually, interestingly, I know we're going off on one of our famous movie heaven, movie hell tangents here, but I do want to ask because I've not seen it. Have you, on the subject of From Dusk Till Dawn, have you seen the television version that they made? No, me neither. No. I was just wondering whether it was any good or not. I've heard mixed things about it, so I'll have to check it out at some point, I guess.
I'll probably get around to it at some point, but at this point I haven't seen it, so can't.
Fair enough. Okay. Jackie Brown is I think people don't necessarily jump to this one when they talk about Quentin, but I do think it is one of his stronger pieces actually. It works really nicely, and wonderful. All of the performances are good in this. There's no real duff ones. Somebody who I do think is amazing in it though is Robert Forster. Really is great in this. I mean, that character of Max Cherry is really, you really feel for the guy, and you love it that he's sort of smitten with Pam Grier, and who wouldn't be. But you kind of love that, and at the end you kind of I was kind of really rooting for them. You know what I mean? So
well, yeah. I mean, I think the thing I like about this film is it's a film that sort of deals with getting older.
Yeah.
Because especially with those two characters, there are two characters who are getting older and are sort of looking at their lives and seeing the mistakes they've made, and they have this sort of opportunity to sort of maybe get out of the ruts they're in, and they decide to go for it. But at the end of the day, the only one who truly gets out of it with something is Jackie Brown, because Max Cherry decides that he likes the rut he's in, I guess, or that he doesn't want to sort of change. I can imagine him being a character, that character, if he had gone off at the end with Jackie Brown in Ordell's car, that I don't think he would know what to do with himself. He's somebody who needs to be doing something, and that something is being a Bell's bondsman. So
actually, you saying that, you've raised a really interesting point, I think, which is something again about Tarantino sort of generally, which I quite like, is when you actually think about typical Hollywood as it is, and it's always about it's always somewhat ageist. It's always about everybody has to be young and good looking, and in their 20s, and then really hot and all this sort of stuff. But Tarantino films, when you look at them generally, that's actually not necessarily the case. He does always have characters that are a little older and have experienced life and maybe are slightly more weathered and things of that nature, which is kind of, when you look at the body of work, that is kind of a common thing, isn't it? Which I kind of like.
Well, yeah, but I think it comes from the fact that he casts a lot of his heroes in films.
That's right. Yeah, they were in their 20s when he was a kid or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
And there are films that he watched a lot in the the video store.
Yeah.
And, he got the chance to sort of cast people, and he decided to cast those people instead of casting up and coming people. But I think it's the last film of his really that deals with age.
Yes.
because yes, the characters in some of his later films are older, but it's never discussed.
Yeah.
It's never really a thing. And yet this film tackles old age or growing older head on.
Yeah.
And it does remind me a lot of one of the themes from Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan.
Yes.
About feeling older.
Love it. I love it that you've tied that in. Amazing. Wow. Yes. No, I mean, that's...
but come on. I mean, it's the thing about Wrath of Khan is, especially with Kirk's character, is he's a character who feels old, that he's been put out to pasture, that becoming an admiral was the worst thing he could have possibly done, because at the end of the day, the best thing he could do was being a starship captain.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's the arc through, essentially from Star Trek 2 through 6 is that arc about age and
kind of. But I mean, it didn't have to be, because the end of part 2, when they're looking over the Genesis planet, and I can't remember who asked Kirk how he felt.
McCoy says, Jim, how do you feel? And he goes, young. I feel young. Yeah, here's that.
Young. I feel young.
Exactly. No, I mean, I love it. And, people used to say, remember back in the day, people used to sort of say, but those original crew from Star Trek, they're getting a bit old for these. And I'm saying, well, you're missing the fucking point. That's entirely the point. It's like, although I laugh at it now, because when you think about it, whereas nowadays, turning, like Kirk's character was turning 50 or whatever, and that's like no big deal nowadays, right? But you think about it, in 250 years' time, that's probably going to be like nothing. It's probably going to be like he's still got a 50-year career ahead of him.
Possibly. I mean, I think it's a hang up of people.
Yeah.
I
know I'm hung up on age.
Yeah, I mean, you hit a certain age and you go, and you stop and think, and you go, bloody hell, I've been around for that long. And does that mean now that, that whole idea of there being less days ahead and more days behind?
Well, fortunately, we're not quite there yet. Well, hopefully, God willing. But I mean, on the subject, what was I going to say? Oh my God, age is kicking in because I've completely forgot what I was going to say. Bloody hell.
I'm sure it's something to do with Star Trek and age.
Yeah, I'm sure. Probably. Oh dear. Never mind.
Oh well, old age has kicked in early for Keith.
Oh dear, very early. But I can't remember. It was a really good point as well, and it's gone completely out of my head.
Oh well, I think I'll sort of sum up my feelings about it. But yeah, it's a film that I enjoy quite a lot. I enjoy the soundtrack. I think the soundtrack's really good. It's probably those first 3 soundtracks for Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, and Jackie Brown really up there. And I was listening to the Projection Booth recently, where they did a special on Reservoir Dogs, and what they did was it was just the episode before, they took all the songs that were mentioned and were played on Reservoir Dogs, the whole that Steve Wright mentions on the radio station, and they played them out in order, and a lot of the songs that they mention went on to appear in Pulp Fiction and in Jackie Brown.
There you go. Yes. So. Yeah. By the way, I have remembered what I was going to say about age. Yeah. And I want to get off the topic of age. I promise. But one of the things I was going to say is the trouble with age. I've always sort of measured age against my heroes, both in front of and behind the camera. And that's the problem. I've always sort of compared myself to that. And as the years have gone by, and the target moves, you know what I mean? You say, I need to have accomplished this by 30. Okay, that hasn't happened. So and it moves slightly, but it doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah, but Ridley Scott didn't make his first feature until he was in his 40s.
No, but he wasn't an actor as well. This is the thing. Acting is horrible for that whole thing. But there you go.
But that is a subject for
That's a whole nother podcast. Absolutely. And oh god, I can't. Yeah, well, I even lost my train of thought. So what the hell is that saying? I put it down to a busy week and feeling tired. There you go. That's my excuse.
Yeah.
And I'm sticking to it.
So yes, Jackie Brown,
awesome.
Definitely worth checking out. And yeah, we'll move on to our picks for movie hell just after these messages.
Ooh.
Do you like science fiction and fantasy? Do you like things to be rigorously, or rather obsessively alphabeticized? Then do we have the show for you. The A to Z of SFF takes a wry, lightly fictionalized approach to the compulsive breaking over of pop culture artifacts that make up so much of today's podcastosphere. We cover everything from RNA Aardvark to Zardoz, and all points in between. Zardoz might be a welcoming mind. We've been at this for a year and we haven't finished the A's yet. The A to Z of SFF, a podcast of epic triviality. 2 men, 26 letters, 1 universe. Search for us on iTunes or your favourite podcast app as the A to Z of SFF, or check out our website, theatozofsff.com.
What's the matter, Jane?
It's kind of hard to explain. I can't put my finger on it, but there's definitely something wrong. Jane?
I suppose we can't expect her to get over it just like that.
It must be past this.
So bright. Why is it so bright in here?
It's just the dawn, Jane.
You have to take her to the hospital. Have her placed under constant watch.
Well, that much I know, but who done it?
You don't even try and stop me. You know I'm going to harm you, yet you do nothing. What about that wonderful husband of yours?
No, Martin. I love him.
Well, someone has to die.
Blood and Roses. Available now on Amazon.com, on DVD and video on demand. So, Keith, what is your pick for movie hell?
Okay, well, as I already said, there's things that Tarantino has done and directed that I didn't think was so good. We mentioned Forums already, and also I have to say, the segment that he directed in Sin City, which is a film I really like, but that segment I don't think is great either.
I thought it was all right.
It's all right.
I thought it was all right. I thought it kind of, it was odd to have a guest director in it, but I don't think it affected the film at all.
Right. Yeah, no.
It wasn't it didn't suddenly take a curveball and was completely different.
Yeah.
I mean, it fitted within what they were doing.
Fair enough. But the film I have picked for movie hell is from 2007, and it's Quentin's half of the Grindhouse double feature, which is called Death Proof, which I have to admit, when I first saw it, I thought it was just meh, okay, it was fine. I saw this, and then I saw Planet Terror, which was the Robert Rodriguez half, and I have to say, watching them as individual films, I actually preferred Planet Terror over Death Proof.
This is the thing. This is the thing, though. I sorry to interrupt you, but this is the thing. Was that I remember the lead up to these films coming out, and I remember seeing the trailer before seeing Sunshine at the cinema, and seeing Grindhouse, and I was so looking forward to this. I was so looking forward to seeing this double bill because I'd never been to one. I'd never experienced anything like that where you had a double bill, where you had two films playing on the same program. And
That was a very 70s thing, wasn't it?
yeah, but we didn't get it. It didn't do well over in the States. In the States, they didn't get it at all. I believe people walked out after the first film because the credits came up and they thought, that's it. That's the film over. Off we go. And so they panicked and they then split them up and had them released separately. And so we got Death Proof first, which was a longer cut than the one that came out in Grindhouse.
Yeah.
And then we got Planet Terror afterwards. And I'm like you, I enjoyed Planet Terror a lot more than I enjoyed Death Proof. I remember that everybody was hailing Death Proof to be this great thing, that, oh, Tarantino's done something different with the genre film, that, you know, he's made a what do you call it, like a slasher film with a car. And you think, oh wow, this is gonna be good, and then you saw it.
Yeah. No, I absolutely. I mean, I saw the films individually first off, and you know, like you said, they kept saying Tarantino's done something different, and it didn't feel that different. You know, there were a lot of Tarantino tropes and traits in it. It just didn't seem quite as good or quite as interesting. But having said that, I was lucky enough, the Prince Charles cinema did actually show it as a proper double feature. And the atmosphere was amazing as well. I mean, sometimes the audience can make or break a film when you watch it, and this was fantastic. And it was much more enjoyable in that version because, like you said, it was a slightly edited version.
Yeah, it's a short version.
And they had these wonderful faux trailers in between, you know, it joining the double feature. Well, I mean, one of which got made into a film in the end because it was the whole Machete film, you know.
Well, and Hobo with a Shotgun.
Oh, and Hobo with a Shotgun. Yeah, okay. So you know, some of them got made, but they you know, they had some brilliant ones in there that were really hilarious by a sort of other guest directors and whatever. And I thought it worked much better in that context than it did as a standalone film. So
well, yeah, I mean, that was the thing I was looking forward to, and that's what the kind of experience I was after. And I actually went to see it as a free screening with a friend of mine, and I do remember that violence nearly broke out because my friend just wouldn't stop making noises.
Oh, what good noises?
Yes. No.
Okay.
No. You probably people have experienced this when they've gone to see a film at the cinema, and they would have that one person. They're not a talker. They're just a snorter.
Ah, okay.
But they have to make noises. They're sort of.
Oh dear. Yeah. Let's not.
I mean,
go
I don't
there.
want to. No. I'm not going to name names, but I just remember in the middle of this screening where the guy behind me was getting very vexed, and his wife sort of went, "No, don't do it."
Oh dear. That could have been embarrassing. Okay.
Oh yeah.
But you know, this film, I mean, you know, it's got Kurt Russell in, who's playing this stuntman, who's
there's not enough Kurt
no,
Russell.
I was going to say he's ever likable, you know, to have Kurt in something. This was also the first time in terms of an acting role that Tarantino worked with the stunt woman Zoe Bell, who he now seems to be, you know, she seems to be one of his regulars now. You know, she was even in Hateful Eight as a character. So it's quite nice that he sort of managed to launch.
Have you heard the Zoe Bell story?
No, tell me in case I don't know it.
Okay. I can't remember if it must have been one of these roundtable talks or something, because I heard this recently. But Tarantino was talking about Zoe Bell, and Zoe Bell was she was a stunt double for Uma Thurman in Kill Bill.
That's correct, yeah.
And he told her that he wanted her to act, even though she would be wearing the helmet and everything. She still wanted to sort of be in the mindset of the character. And he was saying that one day, because it was such a long shoot, one day he was really down. He felt the pressure of it all. He was really fed up, and he sees Zoe Bell sitting down, sort of in the corner, not doing anything. And he goes over to her and he's like, "Is everything all right?" And he says, "No." He went up to her and she said, "Oh, I'm just waiting for you to, tell me what my motivation is." And he felt so proud. He said at that moment his heart melted because he's like, "Oh my God, I've turned Zoe Bell into an actor." And I think from that point on, he's just, just wants her in all his films. And, and I have to say she gets served really well in his films because she has appeared in other films and she's kind of been blink and you miss her. I think the one example I can give is with Oblivion.
Right.
She was one of the sort of, spoiler if you've not seen Oblivion, human characters who's, that kind of the resistance. And she sort of stands there in the background and doesn't say anything or might have one line. Yet, in films like Death Proof and everything else, she has a major role. Though saying that, Django Unchained, you wouldn't have known it was her underneath that scarf if she wasn't credited. She doesn't say a word in that film.
That's true.
So I kind of slightly take that back, but in Death Proof and in Hateful Eight, she gets used a lot.
And in this film. Death Proof. Yeah, of course. You're talking about Death Proof.
This film.
I am really having one of those days, aren't I?
You are. Age has caught up with you.
Oh my God, I hope not. Oh dear, Kirk, where are you? No. So no, absolutely. But it was good that she's in this, and she plays a stunt woman, which kind of makes sense. She plays a New Zealand stunt woman, so it's not a massive stretch, but
no, definitely a part written for her.
But yeah,
well, I'm gonna say my problems with this film is the fact that you get to know one group of women and then they get killed off, and then you have to get to know another group of women again. Now, one of the problems is that both groups of women are not that interesting. But out of the two groups, I do prefer the first group because they seem to be, well, they seem to have less screen time than the other group. The other group, screen time seems to be very long, or if it wasn't, it feels very long.
Yeah.
And at least with the first lot, you actually feel like they're actually being stalked. And then the second lot, not so much. I mean, the whole sort of talk about, Italian Vogue. I don't think women get such, I don't know. Do they sort of get so turned on by Italian Vogue?
I don't know because I'm not a woman, but
I don't think so.
I don't know the answer to that, but
I mean, also the fact that the whole sort of obsession with this white Dodge Charger from Vanishing Point.
It's movie reference for movie reference sake, isn't it?
I know, but it takes up a whole lot of the film. Yeah. And watching it this time, I was thinking, bloody hell, I know it's a film, but you imagine now after everything that's happened, they have to take it back to the owner. And the state it was in, it was all banged up to hell and stuff. And it's just like, it was either that or they kept the car and they left Mary Winston with the dirty old man who again was in Kill Bill playing a dirty old man.
Yeah,
as well.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
In some respects, in this film, I mean, we were saying earlier about the age of characters, and in this one, you've got these groups of young girls, and it is almost like that. In some respects, they're almost there for just a bit of eye candy. It sort of feels in places, because it does go on a bit a bit long. And then of course you've got Quentin playing the owner of the bar in this one, which
I know he was so awful.
Yeah.
It's like, who's this guy? He's Stuntman Mike. What's he do? He's a stuntman. It's just like, wow, you putting any effort into this? I mean, at least in Django Unchained, he was trying an Australian accent, which was probably the worst Australian accent ever.
It was it was the thing that pulled me out of the film, I have to say.
Oh God, yes. I mean, if there's 20 minutes that could have been cut out of the film, that was the 20 minutes.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I mean, also the fact that you've also got a proper Australian actor there, you know, playing alongside him. I mean, you've got the chap from Wolf Creek.
Mm-hmm.
You know, give him a bigger role, not Tarantino. Oh.
Yeah, no, exactly. And we talked earlier about the sort of Tarantino Rodriguez universe thing that they created. Of course, you've got in this as well. You've got Michael Parks playing Earl McGraw, you know, the Texas Ranger that's obviously recurring in some of the other films as well.
So that's right, from Kill Bill. Yeah,
that's right. So you've got that going on here, but you know the film it's not awful at all, but I just think that it works as it was originally intended. So if you watch it as a double feature, which I believe, in fact I know because I have it, that's available on Blu-ray. You know, you buy Blu-ray, yet the things scratch the buggery. the look of this film is, you know, to try and
I mean that was the other thing as well, which is I think was kind of it's weird because it's played for fun in Planet Terror, but in Death Proof just doesn't work.
It's just a bit distracting.
I mean,
really, isn't it?
It's very distracting, and the whole sort of end of end of real thing, you know, where part of the scene just ends.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work, and the whole sort of color change as well when it goes from color to black and white and stuff. Now, one of my favorite films is a film called If.
Oh right, yes, that's Malcolm McDowell, right? Is it the Lindsay Anderson film? Is that right?
Lindsay Anderson, that's correct. And in that film,
see, my brain is still there. I haven't completely.
It's still
lost
there.
it.
Very, very good, very good, very good. With a young Malcolm McDowell as the lead.
Yeah.
Now the thing is, in that film, they use color and black and white film. Now, one of the reasons why they used it was because of budget, because they couldn't afford to film color for certain. You know, they couldn't afford to film color for the whole film, so they had to use black and white. So what they decided to do was use the black and white for the more fantastic scenes, the stuff where you weren't quite sure if that was actually happening or not.
Yeah, a good stylistic choice. Working to their budget. That's quite a good idea.
You know, a choice made out of necessity. Yeah. In this, it was just distracting as hell, and it just didn't work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's kind of, you know, like I was saying, that I think in its originally conceived context. So, in other words, if you watch this as a double bill feature, in one sitting with the faux trailers in the middle, it works and it's quite entertaining. However, if you take Death Proof as a standalone Tarantino film to watch, you know, in its slightly extended version, like you said, with all this added scratch and noise, it's actually it doesn't quite work, which is why I picked it as movie hell out of Tarantino's body of work. I think this is probably, although entertaining and although it does have its merits, I think this is probably the weakest entry in his portfolio to date. And you know, he's redeemed himself since with Django and you know, Hateful Eight and whatever. But this particular film, you know, in this standalone edition, I don't think is particularly works. So hence movie hell.
His films of late have gotten very flabby, and there's some, as I say, there's stuff in it that you could cut out quite easily. I would be quite interested in seeing like Grindhouse as a double bill and see the shorter version of Death Proof, because I do find that the longer version drags, especially in the second half.
Yeah.
Drags a lot.
Yeah. Well, it was, I have to say, seeing it at the Prince Charles, it was obviously a sellout 'cause it was kind of a one-off screening of this, and it was only shown for a day, so a couple of showings or whatever. And it was definitely the right audience to see it with, because you know, the audience really, you know, there were a lot of Tarantino Rodriguez geeks in there, and they loved this stuff. And when the trailers came up and whatever, there was applaud and cheering, and it was really good. So my memory of that is much better, and that's what caused me to actually purchase the Blu-ray of the double feature rather than buying the film individually. So yeah, that would be my recommendation for what it's worth.
Well, my recommendation of a film to avoid is Inglourious Bastards.
Okay,
it's my pick for movie hell.
Yeah.
It's I was quite intrigued that Tarantino was going to do a war film, and from the looks of it did look like he was going to do the Dirty Dozen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially that first trailer we saw with Brad Pitt talking to his men.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I thought, oh, we're going to have a Dirty Dozen film. And it's certainly not that. If anything, the Inglourious Bastards aren't in it that much. If anything, it's more about the other characters. So I think we can say that the main character in Inglourious Bastards is the French Jewish woman. Whose name I gotta find?
Yeah, I know who you mean. I can't think of her name either.
Melanie Laurent.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
who plays Shoshana or Shoshana. Shoshana. Sure. Yeah, and her sort of, you know, plan to take revenge on the Reich for the killing of her family. Now, the one thing I'll give this film is that this is the film that introduced the world to Christoph Waltz, and it's the best present that Tarantino's ever given.
I agree 100% on that.
Really, I mean, Christoph Waltz is just massive.
Well, now he's a Bond villain. Absolutely.
Yeah. The fact that he's advertising video games at the moment.
Wow. Yeah.
With his Clash of Clans.
Yeah.
I mean, that trailer was seen at the cinema was really good.
That's the thing with James Corden, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. It's a shame about James Corden. I'm not a big James Corden fan.
He's doing well for himself.
Yeah. Oh boy, is he, isn't he? That's the thing. If you're not a fan of somebody and they're doing really well,
it makes it even worse. Yeah.
Worse, yeah.
I don't mind him. Good on him, I say. But yeah.
Yeah, I just sort of avoid it. Really, it's the best way to deal with it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right though about bringing Christopher Waltz to the sort of mainstream attention, because you know this film. It's fair to say that the best scene in the film is the first scene, isn't it?
I would say the best scenes are all the scenes with Christoph Waltz in it. He plays such a great bad guy in this, and it's just a shame that his screen time is not much in comparison to other actors in it.
Made up for it in Django, though.
Yes. Oh, hell yeah. Oh, amazing in Django.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, just great. I mean, the whole, as you say, the opening sequence, the use of language in that scene works really well, because they it's like you think at first, oh, they're switching to English because that's just a filmic thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's always that bit where suddenly we hear them speaking English for whatever mechanic the film's used. Yeah. I mean, I always loved the mechanic of the little chip that the main guy gets in the last Starfighter, so he can then suddenly understand what all the aliens are saying.
Oh, right, yeah, like
and
the
so we can all
translator
understand.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but he gets a little chip on his collar.
Yeah.
So suddenly now we hear everything's in English. It's a lovely mechanic. It works, but in this film, it's great because he's using it as a way that the Jewish family below don't understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
They don't understand English.
Yeah, rather than doing a Hunt for Red October style or Valkyrie style
yes.
trick to the audience. But yeah, no, you're right. In this, it serves the plot very well.
So I mean, I love the scene with him and Brad Pitt where he's trying to sort of deal his way out the war. I love the way he goes, "That's a bingo," just the look on his face. It's really well done.
Was this the one he won the Oscar for, or was it
no,
Django? It was Django, wasn't it? But he was nominated, I think, for this.
He was nominated, yeah, but Django he won and well deserved, because in Django it's a great.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, and I always miss that character when he gets killed off.
Yeah. Spoiler. No, I'm just. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you listen to this show, everything's a spoiler.
Spoiler alert. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I mean, one of the things I remember, some of my students were watching this or had watched this film, and the thing I found quite scary is some of them, thought that historically this, and I'm like, no, you have to understand it's set in that time period and thing, but this is like an alternate reality. This is not, this is not historically accurate, guys. Please don't grow up telling your children this.
Well, this is just a fairy tale.
Exactly.
It is a
It's
fairy
just a
tale.
backdrop.
Well, it starts off once upon a time in occupied Germany.
Exactly.
Or occupied France, sorry. And it's just like, it's a total fabrication. It's a completely made up. But yeah, it's just.
I found it long. I don't necessarily. Sadly, I didn't have time this week to revisit this for this podcast, which is a shame because it's always better when I do. But again, this is another long film, and it felt, although I enjoyed it when I saw it, at the same time it did feel overly long, and it didn't have, even though he did his usual sort of chapter structure and whatever with this, it didn't feel as sort of cohesive as a Jackie Brown or a Pulp Fiction or a Django comes to that.
Well, the problem was there was too many characters and they were all over the place, and you weren't really following one group of characters throughout the whole thing, and it was just too much. It was just too much, and it's just not enough there to sort of keep you gripped. I think there was not enough meat on the bones of this film, and it just felt very thin. I mean the fact also that his best scene was sort of before the end, the shootout in the basement.
Yes.
Great scene, great suspense scene, and then after that, everything sort of pales in comparison to it. I mean, the ending with the whole setting the cinema on fire and stuff.
Yeah.
As fun as that was, just. It also tonally as well, compared to the rest of the film, was really off. I mean, the whole, Brad Pitt, Eli Roth, and the other character all pretending to be Italian.
Yeah. Oh no, that was a bit ridiculous.
Giorno.
That was ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the other thing is, and I think you said this, but there was a, this was a ridiculously huge cast. I mean, there were a hell of a lot of characters to deal with in this. He always has a, reasonably large ensemble, but this one really was. And that you had to have a lot of real estate to get all of these characters in and rounded and whatever. And
is there really? I mean, if you take the films we've spoken about, who are the main characters in Reservoir Dogs? Who are on the screen the most?
Yeah. I mean, it's not.
No, but I mean, I'm asking you, how many?
I
mean, think about it.
Well, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, probably half a dozen at most. Yeah.
Well, you've got it's mostly those guys in the warehouse.
Yeah.
So you've got Mr. White, Mr. Orange, Mr. Blonde, Mr. Pink.
Yeah.
So it's 4 guys. Yeah, there are other characters, but it's all about these 4 guys. You take Pulp Fiction. So you've got Vincent Vega, Jules, Bruce Willis's character.
Yeah. Butch.
Uh,
Butch.
yeah, Butch.
What is it like to kill a man?
Butch. What does Butch mean? Names don't mean shit here in America. So you got those three characters. I mean, you got Mia Wallace, but really she only comes into it for one chapter. So in that one, then baby, just you've got three main characters.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, you have a lot of characters.
This one, you've got, so you got, you've got Brad Pitt, you got Melanie Laurent, you got Christoph Waltz, you got Eli Roth, Michael Fassbender, Diane Kruger, and it's just like,
and the list goes on.
It's on, and it's just she's just nobody really there to follow. And of course, the other thing that annoys the hell out of me is the Michael Myers cameo scene, where he is, you can tell he is fighting the urge to do Austin Powers. He's always doing the little sort of smile, where he curls up his mouth at the end and he does that kind of look. And also the fact that they use kilometers when they're talking.
Oh, that made me laugh. Yeah.
I'm like, these guys, I was like, what the fuck, Tarantino? And that always knocks me out of the film. What the fuck, Tarantino? They're supposed to be British. We talk about miles. You're the guy who introduced people to the notion
the metric system
of the system of Royale cheese. Yeah. You know that there's no metric system in bloody Europe or England, and yet you go on with bloody kilometers.
Yeah,
we don't even use kilometers now. What the fuck?
No,
it's just so annoying. So it felt lazy.
Yeah,
it really felt like he had done any research at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, yeah, we in England are a bit confused in the fact that we kind of straddle that. We're not completely metric, but we're not totally imperial either. We're always a bit of a mix. I always laugh when we get in our cars because, we measure everything in miles per hour and yards and stuff to turn-offs, etc. Yet, we set the temperature at degrees Celsius and fill the car up in liters, and it's like, yeah, we're kind of, we're not one or the other, are we? It's kind of madness. But anyway, how did we get on to talking about the metric system? That's our Tarantino.
Because I'm saying that bloody Tarantino was lazy.
He was, yes.
And not use kilometers in his scripts. And nobody turned around and say, Tarantino, actually, this is kind of wrong.
Well, yeah, particularly at that era as well.
I mean, in fact, you got Michael Fassbender in the bloody scene. They did not turn around and go, Tarantino, miles, not kilometers.
Yeah, no, exactly. In fact, interesting mention Michael Fassbender there, because of course this was, again, he'd been around for a while, but this was before he was the sort of, A-list megastar that he's since become, which is quite interesting, isn't it? This is just before, isn't it? Just before.
Well, it is, and also the fact it's probably why he's not in it that much. I mean, if anything, he is criminally underused.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked his character, the idea of that he was versed in German cinema and that he could speak German. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those sort of annoying things where there's some lovely moments in it. I mean, the fact that what gave him away was the way he did free, because German people use their thumb for free, while he used his fingers.
Yeah.
Even, where he thought it was can't let a good Scotch go to waste. Oh boy.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, I mean, it has its moments, this film, but I know what you mean. You say about not so memorable. I would say this one's probably one of the least memorable for me, but then maybe that's purely because I haven't watched it as much as the other films.
Yeah, I've only watched it twice, and I watched it the first time and I wasn't impressed, and then I came back and watched it for this, so I don't think I'll be returning to it anytime soon. And also, I don't think Eli Roth is that.
No, he's not. No, not at all. Again, it's the mates thing, isn't it?
Yeah, in this and in Death Proof, it's terrible.
Yeah, and interestingly, in this one, of course, Samuel L. Jackson is just the narrator, isn't he? Well,
he's a voiceover that's put in there for, I don't know, the for people who don't get
Yeah.
the point. I mean, he talks about the whole nitrate film
Yeah.
being flammable and stuff like that, which I think by the end of the film you would have understood that
Yeah.
point. I don't think there would have been anybody at the end of the film going, film, why is it on fire?
Well, no, not with all the stuff that happens in this film. That's the least of the things to nitpick. But yeah.
Yeah, it was just a bit. I don't know. I find that voiceover a bit weird.
But it's almost like he had to use him, isn't it? It's kind of weird. It's like
Yeah,
that's his main
yeah.
collaborator, and yeah, I don't know. I have to admit, I really should have rewatched this, but I didn't. So, and there's probably something to be said for that. But yeah, it's not one of his best efforts, in my opinion. And I'm just trying to think if I know of anyone that actually thinks this is like his best movie or anything. I'm sure there's those out there.
I know a few people who really
Yeah.
like it. I think as much as we're not big fans of it, I know people actually quite enjoy
Right.
this. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, his films are always interesting. They are interesting. It's not that it isn't an interesting film. I do think it just suffers from being a bit long and trying to serve too many characters. Basically, it's almost trying to be too epic. It's far. And this, of course, was a project that he worked on and developed for years, wasn't it? This was years in the making, and he went off and made other films in between.
We spoke earlier about how he was developing this and the Vega brothers at the same time.
Yeah.
And so it was a project that he had a long gestation, but I think probably might have been one of its problems that I think this is the thing. There's a saying, isn't there, about when it comes to editing, about kill your darlings, kill the things that you really love if they're not working within the film. And I think that's a lesson he doesn't adhere
to. Yeah.
Has learned or adhered to. Because it does feel like the film, especially that film, it felt like they pushed out the first cut.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like anything was taken out of it. And it should have. There should have been, as I say, at least 20 minutes taken out of it. I mean, there's a whole segment in the middle where the Melanie Laurent's character is meeting with all these German officials about using her cinema for this screening, for the end of the film. And it goes on and on. And, it does lighten up a bit when Christoph Waltz turns up. But you have to sit through so much of it beforehand. It just it stops the film dead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I tend to agree. Are you saying you'd have rather he made the Vega brothers?
No, I wish he'd made the Dirty Dozen.
Yes.
That he just concentrated on the Bastards instead of trying to get everything else in, and also, the total, and end the war. There's too much of having his cake and eating it.
He was that powerful at this point that I suppose he could, but doesn't always work. But it's not without its merit, though. I think it's fair to say the film is not without its merit. It has points.
It has interesting scenes, but they're scenes.
Well, like you also said, it introduced the sort of English-speaking Hollywood mainstream world to Christoph Waltz, which is which if for nothing else, that's wonderful, right?
Yeah. I know you're trying to be positive.
I'm trying,
about it,
but I know what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, I know I said about Jackie Brown that I loved the scene with Beaumont, and that works as a scene on its own. But then the story works
great
as well, and what happens in those events have effect on everything else. And the scenes that work well in Inglourious Bastards, you could take out and have them on their own. But a lot of the other scenes, it just, as a whole, it just doesn't work.
I was just wondering, while we're talking about Tarantino, did you ever see the 2-part episode of CSI that he did called Grave Danger. Did you ever see that?
Yes,
What were your
I did.
thoughts on that?
I thought it was fine. It was just played as a normal CSI episode with a cliffhanger. I don't think he brought much to it. I know they made a big deal out of it. I remember they actually had it out on DVD as just the 2 episodes.
Yeah, well, actually, it's the only CSI DVD I've got. I have to say, so it's one of those ones I bought. You can buy it as a standalone. But I mean, there's so much CSI material out there. I can't even keep up with it all. But I remember I was house sitting for someone once that had they had the DVDs of like the first 4 or 5 seasons, and I did kind of I had nothing else to do, so I back to back sort of watched everything, which was quite interesting. It's only really the Vegas CSI that character wise I sort of found remotely interesting. I never got hooked by the Miami or the God knows where or
Miami
the other ones.
He used his psychic powers on that one.
yeah it's Caruso in the sunglasses, wasn't it?
That's right.
But it was interesting in so much, you're right, it was kind of a normal episode. Obviously Tarantino a big fan of it. However, they have 1 or 2 like sort of odd scenes in it that were very Tarantino that he got to sort of play with. But also the characters did do a few things that were sort of a little bit uncharacteristic if you'd watched everything leading up to it. And one of the things that bothered me slightly, and it's really nitpicky, but Nick Stokes, the one who ends up in the coffin, buried in that episode, when he turns up at the crime scene and he kind of introduces the character, he spits. And I sort of thought to myself, would a crime scene professional like him spit their DNA into a crime scene area? And it's almost like it almost felt like it was something that Tarantino had directed him to do, and it felt a bit jarring. But I'm being ultra nitpicky here.
I have to say, I probably have more fonder thoughts of his episode of ER than I do of CSI.
I'm not sure I'd seen that one actually.
It was well, there was quite a few nods to Tarantino. There was a bit with the 2 nurses walking down the corridor wearing sunglasses.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I remember that one more.
Were they whistling?
No.
But it's
no, this is not Kill Bill. This was back way before that. This was after he'd done Reservoir Dogs.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. Yeah, it was early on.
They would have to be walking along whistling and wearing an eye patch.
Indeed. Yes. Yeah. No, it's cool. But I mean, he's done a lot of stuff. It is interesting. He's only done the 8 films, but they have been sort of 8 films that have really stood out. And the sheer mention of his name and people sort of pay attention. So not bad for a guy who had a sort of troubled working class upbringing or whatever, and worked in a video store, which is always the famous story, isn't it? That everybody cites.
But we're going to end it there. We're going to end on our customary manner now. So Keith, where can we find your work?
Okay, if you go to YouTube and put in British Isles, as in EYLES. Do you like what I did there? British Isles, but spelt with my surname, EYLES. Then you can find short films that I've written, produced, and directed there to view and comment on if you wish. And that's also a way of getting in touch as well.
You can find my work as always on independentrunnings.com. You can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search Movie Heaven, Movie Hell. And when you're on iTunes or Stitcher, please leave us a review and a rating. So join us next time for our next letter in the A to Z of directors.